Okay, welcome everybody to the final week, week 4 of course 211. This is our final week. It's been kind of a strange course though with the break between weeks 3 and 4. I did notice that a few of you got caught up on some work. I appreciate seeing that. And this is it. Saturday at midnight's the end of this course. So please, I just sent out an email today. I put an announcement up. I'm encouraging all of you to get caught up. All of the discussion boards are open and ready to take your posts, even if they're late. I will give you at least most of the credit. I do have to discount the credit for not turning it in on time, but if you're at this point and thinking, I'll listen to the session, but I'm not sure I can finish the course because I find myself so far behind at this point, I just strongly encourage you to consider still finishing. Even if everything's turned in late at this point, if you put enough effort and time into it, there's still a good chance for you to be able to pass the class. And if you're in contact with me, that'll improve your chances if we're in communication about your grade and about the types of things that you can effort and do this week, spend time and energy on to deserve at least a passing grade to get on to the next class. So I wish you all luck. I hope it's a good week. This week we had some different readings. We also have a graded discussion board, which is a break from what you usually have in most of your courses. Once again, we don't have a final test. We don't have an assignment. We haven't had tests or assignments, but you do have a week 4 graded discussion board. So, and it's worth, a quarter of your grade. So it's well worth your time to put in the effort and time this week to complete that. I've got a few posts on it, so it's up and running. And the instructions have been there now for a while, although I don't know that you had access to it until now. So go ahead and review that after reviewing this session, which will give you a lot of feedback that will be helpful, I think, for the discussion board and making sure that you finish strong and get a good grade on this last week. All submissions to this point you should see grades on. If you've submitted anything and don't see a grade on it, please email me right away, so just to bring my attention to it. It may be that it somehow in the system just isn't showing me that you've turned it in, because I show that everything that's been completed to this point has been graded. So if, once again, you have something turned in but don't see a grade or any feedback on it, please zip me a quick email right away to let me know. Okay, so today was an interesting day. The stock market was down 400 plus points at one point, ended the day down 270 points on the Dow. 400 points would have been a record of 84 years since the last time it had such a bad day, the opening day of a new year. Statistically speaking, most opening days of the year are good. Today ended up, at the end of the day when it ended up losing only about 270 plus points, which is still a horrible day, ended up being the worst start since 2008. When the market fell apart. So a lot of people in a bad mood today as far as the market's concerned. As an investment advisor, financial planner, obviously I feel that pressure, and so it's kind of a strange day. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. It's a strange year too with an election cycle and all kinds of other good things happening. Specifically what happened today is overnight the Chinese market fell apart. It actually closed early because it was so volatile, and so markets want to see if the Chinese market can at least settle down, and that will help our markets to settle as well. So anyway, interesting day. So today, I want to cover a couple different things. We've got some different slides here to cover, and then we'll wrap up the course. Okay, so just as a review, and I've already mentioned this, but please get in late work, submit your discussion board comments, even if you have missed the due date. For some of the points, which is much better than 0 and gives you an opportunity to still pass the class instead of failing and having to do the class again. These classes are too expensive and too time consuming to feel like failure is ever an option. I know that's easy to say and harder to do, but if you'll just put in effort this week, plan your time, and put in enough effort, you no matter where you're at in the course at this point, as far as how far behind you feel like you are, you should be just fine to pass still if you get everything completed. So this week there's a short feedback quiz for 15 points. It's 3 questions. please, more than just one little line in a response. It asks you to answer a question and then why. And anytime in a college course when something asks you why, it's a good idea to add a couple lines of justification for what your answer is. So at least a few lines of answering the why questions on that short feedback quiz. Then, of course, and I've mentioned this, we've got the discussion board this week. We also, of course, today marked the first day of restarting the checkpoints. We've been on a break from checkpoints as well for the last couple of weeks. And hope you all had a good holiday, but we're back to checkpoints. So hopefully you can get back in a habit sooner than later of just checking every day to make sure and get those checkpoints that are available to you and giving you some extra credit if you've been diligent about them to this point. Last week, just as a quick review, we talked about SMART, which, if you recall, is the way that we set goals. We talked about how that's how we analyze and set goals. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And it's a good acronym. I think attainable and realistic are pretty similar. But other than that, I mean, it's a nice, easy to remember acronym about setting goals. So as you think about different goals for the new year, remember how we talked about setting them in shorter incremental pieces instead of having just big, lofty goals. We want to set those kind of goals, but then we want to back into smaller things that we can accomplish on a day-to-day basis to make incremental progress towards that goal. So when we talk to people about financial planning, obviously we talk about the big retirement goal that they have, and then we back into what they need to do month to month or year to year to accomplish that long-term goal and try to get them in a pattern of a habit of some kind, either automatic saving, which is the easiest one, or some kind of systematic approach to saving on a consistent basis. And whatever your goal is, if you're specific, measurable, if it's realistic, and you have some kind of timely commitment to it, some kind of accountability that's timely, you'll be in good shape, and you'll improve your chances of actually accomplishing it. We talked about different categories of goals, talked about the 5 F's, and that was a graphic that showed fun, family, friends, finances, work, fitness, and faith, as different broad categories that you could always be thinking about and trying to have something that you're working on, for personal improvement. And then finally, we talked about, just the idea of personal mission statements and how important those can be. They're formed from what you want to accomplish and what's important to you. They're also formed from your values, and we talked about values, and personality in a previous week, but that should drive what becomes, your personal mission statement. Now, the personal mission statement can be an overarching theme for the different goals that you set, and can always be adjusted, right? So we talked about how it's a flexible, it's not static. It's something that can change over time. It's organic. It's something that can grow and change as your life changes, which all of us go through, different fundamental changes in our lives over time. So anyway, so that's the recap on last week. A really good reminder, especially here at the new year, on the types of goals that can be accomplished. And if we go through that SMART system, that acronym of going through each one of those things and really thinking through whether or not we meet, the criteria in each of those categories for a SMART goal, then we improve our chances significantly of accomplishing what we'd like to. And then lots of different categories in the personal mission statement can be a nice overarching theme or mission to what we're trying to accomplish, to establish a culture of the goals that we set. Okay, so just a quick review. Wanted to spend just 5 minutes and just review last week's material. Okay, now this week we have a couple different readings associated with this week's discussion board. So if you go into the discussion board, it'll give you 3 different links, 2 of which they say are required links, and 1 of which is kind of a nice supplement to what you'll be talking about on the discussion board. Doesn't say it's mandatory, but I'd encourage you just to consider it, look at it. Just a list of different priorities, categorized into 3 different categories. We'll look at it briefly tonight, but really it's just something that can be a nice way to go through an exercise of establishing priorities in your life, both personal, professional, and other. And that's how the slide categorizes them as into those three categories and gives you some ideas on the personal and professional priorities, but then also gives you an opportunity to come up with your own priorities that may be a priority to you that we might not share as a collective group, and of course the textbook wouldn't even know because they're not familiar with you personally. So it's a good opportunity to come up with your own things that are specific to you. All right, so that's the non-required reading, but there are two other readings. One of them's on professionalism and one of them's on time management. The one on professionalism I'm going to cover just briefly, before we proceed. We've talked a lot in this class about professionalism. We spent some time on it in weeks 1 and 2, talking about different ways that we accomplish this professionalism that most employers put a high level, high premium on. Let's say that they're always looking for somebody that's very professional and exudes a high level of professionalism. And when we talk about professionalism, I don't know that we've dug down very much on it. One of the things that this article does that I think is very helpful is it talks through what it really means to be professional, and there's a look aspect to it that we've talked about it, dressing, looking, grooming, those kinds of things, looking the part, and how important that is. And we've talked about, even at casual workplaces, there's a reason to dress up for interviews, even if it's a casual workplace. There's a reason to overdress initially in a workplace, just before you get going, and before the expectation gets set as far as how you're to dress. But even if whatever your dress standard is, you want to be on the upper end of the scale of that dress standard. So and that look and feel standard. So if it's a casual dress standard, and you can wear shorts and a t-shirt to your workplace, consider, instead of wearing a dirty hole, a t-shirt with lots of holes and that's very dirty, wearing something that looks good, and well kept and well cared for, because that can reflect and give an impression about who you are, even if it's not an accurate one. And so that's why we encourage people to look apart, look professional. However, the article does a great job of explaining the fact that professionalism goes way beyond how we look, right? Look can be the first impression. Our body language can be, 80% up to 80% of our communication is a nonverbal body language and just a look and feel that people get from what we look like. So don't discount what that is. Don't go into something thinking that, hey, I'm confident that if this person just knows me, gets to know me, that they'll hire me no matter what I look like. Well, that may be the case. Unfortunately, most employers, most hiring managers, most HR personnel are not able to get past a look, a body language, an aura, a feel that you exude from how you look. Like I say, that goes back to just basic grooming. That goes back to, what kind of look you have. And most people, in the few minutes that you're going to get in an interview, can't look past a situation or a look that doesn't seem to fit the professionalism that they're looking for. So just keep that in mind. Right or wrong, right? That's not the issue. Don't kick against this. This isn't something that, if you decide that that's just morally wrong for somebody to judge you based on what you look like, that doesn't change the reality of the fact that people are still going to look at you and judge you based on how you look. And so instead of trying to kick against that, conform to it for the interview process, and then be as individual, and unique as you'd like to be within this, like I say, this range of professionalism that we talked about. And if you just can't stand it at all, go start your own business. Because there are some people that just need, they're unique enough. There just is no professional code of conduct standard that they're going to be able to ascribe to or subscribe to. And so the only real solution for them is to start their own business, which is fraught with all kinds of challenges and is very risky. But if that's where the direction you need to go, and you can make a success, I strongly support you if that's the direction you want to go, but don't make that the default just because you're not willing to conform to some kind of standard of professionalism that might be out in the marketplace for the jobs that you've been looking at. Okay, we've beaten a dead horse. Time to get off the look, but just don't underestimate how important that is. Now, Professionalism encompasses so much more than that. And obviously, once you're in the workplace, the other aspects of professionalism start to become more and more important, to the point where they eclipse by far how you look and how you come across as far as your aura or your image. And so that's where we go into the actions. And this is where this article, I think, does a great job of pointing out some different aspects of professionalism that we may not consider or think about, like integrity, honesty, like doing what you say you're going to do, being accountable, like doing work that's high quality. So, when you do something, you do a good job at it, you do your best at it. And even if you fail sometimes or come up short, it's evident that you put in effort and that you worked hard at it, that you've got a good attitude, that you try to stay positive, that you try to be a problem solver instead of a complainer. Everybody, as a manager, you want people who are optimistic and try, they can be realistic, but they need to try to be optimistic about the job at hand. So a great example of this is today I'm in a meeting with a bunch of different partners, different bank personnel. I've got business managers, I've got regular bankers, I've got branch managers, all kinds of mortgage person, commercial banking. I've got me as a financial advisor. We've got all these different partners in a room, and we start talking about goals for the new year that each of us have. And it becomes evident very quickly that some people are very discouraged by the goals that management has given them, and to the point where I think some of them have already pre-decided that it's just not something that they can accomplish this year. Then you've got other people who have goals that are pretty sobering, that are significant goals that are going to really stretch them, and they're hitting for the fences, right? They're swinging for the fences. They're trying their best. They're going to put 100% effort into it. They're not going to pre-decide that they're going to fail. They're going to do their best at it and keep an optimistic attitude about trying to accomplish the goal that was set out for them. That's really all it comes down to is a difference of attitude, right? It's not that one person that I was meeting with today in this meeting had a substantially harder goal than the other person. It was just the attitude once they got that goal of, okay, I got to make the best of this. I'm going to work my very hardest. I'm going to try to come up with ways out of the box to accomplish this goal, because I can't do what I've always been doing and accomplish it. And it's just an attitude thing. And attitude is so important once you get into the workplace. If you become a toxic attitude, somebody who's always down, somebody who's always dragging other people down, somebody who's always negative and complain about everything that you're doing, it'll become very difficult, you'll find, to get promoted and to be asked to move up within a corporate setting. And it's something that requires you to choose on a daily basis and minute to minute basis even sometimes to overcome kind of the natural pessimism that can occur, especially in a workplace that we don't, maybe we're not having a lot of fun, maybe it's not the most exciting workplace in the world, maybe we have a terrible boss. These are all things that a lot of us deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it's something you learn to cope with and then turn the situation into an opportunity situation of learning and of trying to accomplish and problem solve. Make it a task, make it a puzzle, make it a maze that you have to accomplish and overcome, and keep a positive attitude, because then you'll be looked at as a valuable professional part of the team that you're on. Always be trying to self-improve. One of the most popular questions that people ask today in an interview is, what do you do to learn more? What do you do to try to learn and improve yourself? And if you say, well, I don't know, I don't really, do anything, that's you're not going to stand out among, the 100 people that interview for a coveted job, a great job. That hiring manager wants to hear something specific, not just blowing smoke, something specific that you do in your workplace to try to improve, or personally to try to improve professionally or personally. And that goes back to this goal setting thing that we've talked about. If you're the goal setting type and you're trying to accomplish the next thing and trying to think outside the box and creatively come up with new ideas to be more productive, that's going to be highly impressive to management. And then finally, if you're somebody that really manages your time professionally, and by managing your time professionally, we mean really caring for the time that you're getting paid for, right? The employer is paying you for that time. So there's an expectation, no matter how much they pay you, that you're going to make the most of it and try to accomplish as much as you can in the time that you have. Time, the opposite of time management or time efficiency would be a time waster, right? And if we're a manager, we can't have time wasters on our team. We have to go out and find people who are going to maximize the time that they're given, be as productive as they possibly can in the time that they have, so that they can move whatever work we're trying to accomplish as a team forward the best they can. And the people that are moving that work forward are the people that, once again, are going to be given additional opportunities, be promoted, they're going to be looked at from different departments, and the other people are going to want to bring them in. And even if you don't get promoted at your workplace, you can point to something concrete that you did that really was productive and highly efficient, and you can use that as a case study for the next interview that you go into and impress the next manager or hiring person that you come across. So whether or not there's ability for upward mobility where you're currently at, or whether or not it's just building a resume piece that's something, it's pretty easy as a hiring manager, I think, when you're sitting with interviewees to differentiate between someone who's just giving you an answer they think you want to hear versus somebody who really has been trying to improve and manage their time well and work hard and do high quality work and be honest about what they do. If that's part of them, it's going to be really easy to answer those types of questions in an interview, and they're going to be able to point to very specific circumstances in which they did those things and demonstrated a significant amount of professionalism. So article does a great job of expanding our mind, expanding the scope of what we would traditionally define professionalism at, going way beyond what the look and feel thing, which is so important for that interview aspect and so important for first impressions with clients and customers. But the other issue, that the actions issue, becomes the biggest issue on promotions, opportunities, and how we excel once we're in the job place, once we have the job. Okay, so that's the one article. Next article is a time management article. It's a great article. It gives you 10 tips to be a better time manager, and just some different things that are good exercises. None of them take a lot of time. None of them even take a lot of effort, but they're good. It's just good food for thought about how we manage our time. One of the first things, and I've gone through a couple different consulting firms came in when I was at Northwestern Mutual back in the day, and a couple different consulting firms basically came in to help us manage our time well, because as an insurance agent, it's all about just getting in front of as many people as you can, making as many sales as you possibly can, and if you're wasting time, you're significantly less productive than the folks who are out and spend a lot of time in front of people closing deals. So one of the first steps to most of these consultants, and the first step in this particular article, is to track in a log, and this seems crazy, but take a day or two and track every single thing minute to minute. Keep a journal of everything that you're doing, okay? Even down to the smallest minuscule things, like a walk to the bathroom, a walk to the drinking fountain, a walk to go grab a coffee, a walk, lunchtime, how long that was, time, looking at different, things on the computer, time looking at Facebook, time, whatever it is, talking to a family member, talking to a client, talking to whatever, doing paperwork, and just go line by line by line by line and do, and try to keep your day as normal. Don't create some perfect day because you're keeping track of it. Just do your normal day and track, though, minute to minute what you're actually doing in a logbook. Take it around with you and actually track. And then go back and evaluate what your time was spent doing. Kind of like a budget. A budget is not for proactively trying to save more money. If you want to proactively save more money, you've got to discipline yourself and you've got to automate the savings process. Okay? It's not about making a budget. It's about discipline and saving and automation of your saving. The same is true for changing your life, your work life, and your time management. The exercise is not to track it and then track it and then track it and then track it. It's just to go through that exercise once in a while in order to evaluate different areas where you can just cut out time wasting and improve productive time. And so that tracking, just like a budget does, just gives you where you're at, gives you a snapshot of where you're at, and allows you to make some adjustments. Once again, back to that automated saving, start a savings program, on the budget side. Well, the time management, same thing. We can take different areas of our day and say, okay, if I spend a little less time talking with colleagues or a little bit less time doing this or something a little bit less productive, I can still do those things, but if I just narrow down that time or shorten that time, that'll significantly improve my productivity. Another thing that you have to do is you have to actually schedule things, right? So it doesn't mean minute to minute that you schedule everything, but be pretty specific throughout the day. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? And write it down, because if you write it down, you're halfway there, right? Same idea as goals. When you write down a goal, you're halfway towards accomplishing it. And if you don't write it down and if you don't schedule it, you're much more reactive. This is one of the things I posted on the discussion board, I think in my first comment. We can go through life just reacting to everything. The same is true for our workplace. We can just react, and get kind of shoved around with the wind, as far as what, putting out fires and doing whatever's feels like we need to be reacting to throughout the day. Or we can take better control no matter what position we are, and it's a little different for every position, in every workplace environment, but no matter what position we're in, we can take a little bit better control and actually schedule time for what we need to do that we're most productive for. So that leads to the next point that they talk about, at least 50% of our time doing the most productive exercises. So let's say you work in a real retail situation, and it's very important to your manager that you try to upsell something specific. So if that's priority one, as far as, selling a credit card or doing something, as a retail, as somebody who's cashiering people, you want to be spending a significant amount of your time talking to customers and trying to get them the opportunity to hear about this, this most productive or most important thing as far as your manager is concerned. You want to plan for some interruptions, just like a budget. You want to plan for some cushion of things that come up that you can't plan for. You want to plan, this tells you to have at least 30 minutes of planning in the morning for your entire day, both professionally and personally, to make sure that you've got your day planned out and really spend the time and effort and energy to think through things and not just have things written down, but actually think through how you're going to do them, what would be the best way to focus, in those different meetings and different engagements that you have, and really put some effort into planning on your day and not just in your day, right? We can all react to the day. That would be the planning in your day. But planning on your day, which is, get outside of the reactive environment and plan before you need to start reacting to things and take better control. Talks about taking like 5 minutes before appointments to really brief what your main objectives are and really plan through what the agenda is going to be for those meetings. Be willing to put a do not disturb sign on your door, or be in a situation where if you've got something that's very important to accomplish, that you communicate that to people instead of allowing them to interrupt you. Practice not answering phone, emails, texts, IM. One of the consultants that we had come in had specific times of the day for us to check voicemail, email, text, IM, everything, and then basically said turn all of those off. Not that you're not going to receive emails, not that you're going to receive voicemails, but do not go to those except for the planned time in the day. And the reason is if we get reacting once again to these different calls and texts and IMs and emails that we get throughout the day, and we're not able to focus and accomplish our most productive tasks when we just get whipped around all day by communication. And communication is becoming overwhelming. We've got so many different things that can communicate to us. We've got to be very disciplined about how we react and how we interact with those communication devices. One of the tips is to turn off social media. If there's something non-necessary or unnecessary, turn it off, right? So if you find yourself looking, at Facebook throughout the day, or at Twitter throughout the day, or Instagram throughout the day or something, and we're talking about the work day, right? Then maybe limit that to planned time, right? So you still accomplish it, but it's not just something that you use as what we call a task aversion behavior. Meaning you've got some task at hand, you don't really want to do it, it's not that exciting, it's not something you're really excited about doing. So instead of doing it, you go to one of these task aversion behaviors where you're basically just wasting time because you don't want to do what you need to do, right? So the more of those behaviors you have that present themselves in front of you, the more likely you are to succumb to one of them and put off what you need to accomplish. The other thing, and it's not on the list, but one of these things that we kind of put into, daily life on our personal side, but sometimes don't on the business side. And that is, if you prioritize your day, right, there are going to be some things that you look at when the day starts and say, ugh, I'm not looking forward to that. If you accomplish those things that you're not looking forward to right at the beginning of the day, the hardest things right at the beginning, you'll be much more successful at actually doing those things that you need to get done. What you'll find is that you get to the end of the day, and a lot of those tasks that you don't like to do just will be undone at the end of the day. And you'll say, wow, where did the time go? How come I never got time to do that? It's because subconsciously you're creating aversion behaviors to avoid doing the things that you don't like to do. It's not that you don't think you need to do them, those things that you don't like to do. It's just that you're, like I say, subconsciously creating time fillers to push off the thing that you need to accomplish that you don't like to do. Okay? So put those don't like to do items when you have more energy in the morning, more energy for your workday anyway in the morning. They become harder and harder as the day goes on to actually accomplish. So put those right up front if you can. And then finally, talks about how it's okay not to accomplish everything. Everything. Most of us aren't able to accomplish everything we could possibly do in a day at work. We got to turn it off and start the next day. But planning and taking better control will allow us to focus on that 20% of things that accomplish 80% of our productivity. Okay, it's the Pareto principle, which is 20% of our activities accomplish 80% of our results. In life, in work, it's a principle that crosses over all categories of life, and actually turns out to be true in most all of them, which is that 20% of our actions accomplish 80% of impact. And we need to look at that 20%, try to mimic that, try to make that more of what we're doing to be more impactful, to be more productive. Okay? So that is the reading on time management. As I mentioned before, there's a non-required reading as far as the discussion board is concerned, but I think it's a helpful list. It's just a list. It's just a print-off that you can print off and use it as a template for prioritizing things personally, professionally, and then other. And when we talk about that, of course, it's pretty easy to do the personal and professional, but you might have a lot of other things that are important to you. We talked about goal setting. We talked about those 5 different categories. You might have a lot of things that fall into categories that don't necessarily fit perfectly in personal or professional, and that's why that extra sheet exists. But it's an opportunity for you to come up with what do you value, what are your priorities within those values, and like we've talked about all throughout this course, setting goals that accomplish your mission statement, your values, what's important to you, what are the things that you're trying to accomplish and change and improve. And so anyway, that's an opportunity to look at that. One of the things that you can think about as you think about priorities is what we talked about a few weeks ago, which is all the literature that's out there that says, hey, focus on your talents and strengths first and foremost. Focus on trying to make those talents and strengths permeate everything that you do, because you're going to be uniquely good at a few things. You're not going to be uniquely good at everything. So take the things you're uniquely good at and try to apply them, try to integrate them somehow into your work situation, your work life, your career, more and more. And take the things that you're not good at, try to delegate them, try to communicate to your manager or your superior that those are things that you're not as great at. You're good at some things, you're not as great at some things, and see if there are ways to take those things and either take them off your plate, delegate them to somebody else, and more realistically and commonly, just look to get some understanding between you and management that those are things that you struggle with and you're looking for help, to try to do better at. Okay, because managers will take that as an opportunity to coach and help you, and most managers thrive on the opportunity and it strokes their ego to be able to help you and give you some feedback and some coaching and direction. Okay, so that's something to consider when we're thinking about priorities. Our priorities shouldn't just be a list of things, both personally and professionally, that we're bad at that we want to improve. The majority of our priorities should be things that we value and ways that different talents and things that we're good at that we can exploit to to create the desired result that we want, both personally and professionally. All right, so that's the other reading. Now, I've got a couple other things that I wanted to cover tonight. First of all, we wanted to make sure that we go over very specifically what needs to be done on the discussion board this week. Every week there's been kind of two components, you'll have noticed, to the discussion board. We've got some readings, and then sometimes the readings really have very little to do with what we end up wanting on the discussion board, and that is the case this week. So we've got a couple of readings, and then we get to what the instructions for the actual board are. So the board says something like, give me 150 words at least on a main post about professionalism. But if you don't read on in the instructions, you'll miss the meat, the real content, the real specifics of what the instructions are for this week, which I've listed here so that you can't miss it. Please read on. It says, write down 2 benefits of understanding the difference between clock time and real time at work. So this is something you'll just want to search out and see what that means. At work, at home, and especially with goal setting, make a list of your top 5 priorities and explain briefly why they're important to you. Now, this might have some crossover with your goals, but priorities can be more, they don't have to follow that SMART acronym, right? They can be more of our values and the priorities within those values. And they don't have to be as specific as a goal is. So are they similar to your bosses or companies as a whole when we talk about your priorities, at least in the workplace? And if your priorities are different than your boss's, how will this affect your job, your sense of satisfaction at work, and ultimately the performance of the company? Are your priorities at work similar to your life priorities? So is the difference between your priorities and then the work priorities that your management has or your company has, does that create issues? Does that create any problems? Is it good? It's something to think through and something to establish and resolve in your mind. If your priorities and your values, and we've talked about this before when we talk about the culture of a company, if your culture, if your personality, if your values are wildly different than the culture and personality of the company that you work for, many times that will it'll become problematic, right? Because they have priorities, you have priorities. If they go completely different directions, that can be a challenge. Now, it's not something that you can't overcome. It's not something that you can't put up with just to, feed your family and have a job. But it is something to continually think about, and think about finding a workplace environment, especially when we're interviewing, right? Especially when we're having doors open to us for different careers. It would be a great priority to have to say, okay, here's my mission statement. Here are my goals. Here are my values. Here are the things that are very important to me. Here's my personality. I want to go out and find a company and a workplace environment and even a manager that I feel like matches up with what I think is important. Because if you'll do that, you'll find that in most cases that will give you a lot of work satisfaction, fulfillment. That will help you to feel, the self-actualization that we talked about, which is kind of the pinnacle of what we want to accomplish in our work life. Self-actualization means that we really accomplish what it is that's important to us and what we value within our workplace. And it's not perfect. Doesn't happen all the time. In fact, in most workplaces, that's just not even close to what reality is. But it is something that can be a goal of ours, especially as we start to, like I say, interview at different companies, to find a match for, both what we need financially, but maybe even perhaps more importantly, what we need for our personality, for our value system, for our culture, to match up with a company that we're going to feel fulfillment and enjoyment and happiness, in our work life. Okay, so that's something to consider and to think about, and then to post about this week. I'll be interested to see your responses and posts about that topic. Okay. So 2 more concepts that I wanted to cover tonight. One is urgent versus important, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first I wanted to talk about the concept of flow. Flow is a topic in the business world that's gotten a lot of popularity over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years. And basically, you have this channel of work that can happen where you're the most efficient, most productive that you can possibly be. And that channel or that peak for you might be different Well, it will be different for you than it is for somebody else, right? And the reason for that is illustrated here graphically, and that is you can have a low skill level or a high skill level, and you can get challenged at a low level or a high level. Now, if you have a high skill level and you're not being challenged, you're going to be on the bottom right. You're going to be bored from your work life, and that's the opposite of self-actualization, right? You're not getting fulfillment from your work life, okay? The flip side is if you have a very low skill level, okay, and you're really challenged by your work environment, you're going to have a lot of frustration and anxiety at your workplace, not being able to really accomplish what it is that you're being asked to do and being challenged by. Okay, does that make sense? That's that top right. So obviously we don't want to be in the top right. We don't want to be highly anxious and frustrated by our work environment. We don't want to be on the bottom right. We don't want to be bored by our work environment. We want to be in what's referred to as this flow channel. And this is a pretty simplified version of flow. But I wanted you to think about the concept because I think it's an important concept when it comes to a workplace environment once again. If you're not being challenged and you have the skill set to be more challenged, you should be bringing that up with your manager. If you're in a situation where you're being challenged beyond the skill set that you have, you've got two choices. Either you can go to your manager and complain that, and that usually doesn't go well, or you can look for opportunities to expand your skill level so that you can accomplish and be in that flow channel. And work life will fluctuate. It's not going to sit stagnant, okay, or static there in that flow channel. Your work life is probably going to, let me just do something here. It's probably going to do this kind of thing at different times, okay? You're going to feel at different times that things are going really well, that you understand everything, you're on top of things, and then new management's going to come in, everything's going to change, and you're going to come up here, okay? Technology's going to change, the workplace environment's going to change, new management, new ownership, something's going to change, and you're going to be up here, you're going to be a little bit frustrated, a little bit anxious about what you're doing. Then you're going to improve your skill set, you're going to hone your skills, and you're going to get back into that flow channel, and you're going to get to a point at some point, potentially, where you actually improve your skill set under that management, under that change, where you get to a point where you're kind of too good for the circumstance that you're in, and you start to get a little bit bored. And that's where we talk about either change could facilitate you getting back into the flow channel, or you going to a manager and trying to establish some ways that you can accomplish more or do something differently or be creative, use more of your talents to accomplish, maybe take on a leadership role. This illustration speaks to me why you have people who will take a management role even when it's not financially that significant. So you're going to take on a lot more headaches, right? Managing people is a lot more stressful than not managing people. And a lot of times these people are taking these management roles and really financially that might be a small increase, but it's not substantial enough to justify all the added stress, all the added hours and effort that they're going to have to put into their job. And you might say, well, why would anybody ever do that? And the answer is they get down in that blue category on the bottom right. They get to a point where they're just not getting fulfilled from their workplace environment because they're a little bit overqualified for whatever they're trying to accomplish. And if that's the case, they're seeking something that's a little bit more fulfilling, and that's why you end up with some of these folks going to management, even though, like I say, it may not be from afar. It may not look like it's justified for them to take on management responsibility for the small pay increase that they accomplish. Okay, but it does put them back in their flow channel. Maybe even initially a little bit of frustration or anxiety, but they can get back in that flow channel where they were feeling like they couldn't get out of this boredom stage and just not having any fulfillment, right? Okay. Let's move on. So that's enough about flow. Now, there's an important analysis that Stephen R. Covey does when he talks about time management and being successful in a professional environment, a workplace environment. And it's called the urgent, important analysis. Okay, and he probably calls it something more technical than that, but that's what I've heard it referred to as the important urgent analysis. And basically what it is you categorize the things that you have on your to-do list. Okay, so if you have a day and you're looking at all the things you need to do, and you list things out like you should, schedule them, like we talked about when it comes to prioritizing and time management. And then you need to organize those things, though, by how important and urgent they are. If something's urgent and important, that needs to go to the top of your list. If something's urgent but not important, it needs to go down. And that's the most dangerous category, because things that seem urgent yet are not important end up wasting a lot of our time every day. At least they waste my time. And what I've heard from consultants is that that's our big time wasting category, is things that seem urgent but are not important. And this goes back to communication: emails, voicemails, texts, social media, the news, families, different things that come up throughout the day that get us derailed and take our focus away from what we do for a living that keeps us focused. Anything that's like that may feel urgent, but if it's not important, we need to push it. We need to suppress it. We need to push it down. We either need to delegate it to someone else, or we need to avoid it entirely until we get to the point where we have the time to accomplish it. Okay? So we want to put the urgent and important at the very top of our list, the things that fall into that category. We want to take the important things that are not urgent and make sure and give them time. Okay? This is the category, that top right category, that ends up being put on the back burner. So these would be things like planning, like working on your business, the things that are proactive, not reactive, right? The proactive things where we're trying to really do some good business planning and try to think through an effort, just by thinking how we can do better. Okay, what kind of goal making, goal reaching, goal tracking. These are kinds of things that are important but not urgent, and so sometimes they get avoided, sometimes they never get done, because we have so many urgent things that we're trying to respond to throughout the day. And then finally, we have some things that are just not urgent and not important, and we need to completely avoid these. Okay. Now, you might say, okay, well, what if I put going to the bathroom, getting my coffee, talking with my colleagues in that not urgent and not important category? Does that mean I should just eliminate those things? And the answer is, of course not. You still, it's like we talked about time management. You still plan for interruptions, right? You plan for your sanity. You still need to grab lunch. You still need to grab your morning coffee if that's your routine. You still need to, go get a drink once in a while. You still need to take a break and get up from your work once in a while and do something to get away from it for a second. But you plan those things in, and what you'll find is if you list out everything that you're doing in a day, you'll find a lot of things that are not urgent and not important, and things that you could just cut out entirely to be more productive. The same thing is true for things that are urgent but not important. You're going to find a lot of those things in your day that you can somehow delegate or somehow not do, that give you a lot more time for the things that are important, but maybe you've been avoiding because they're not urgent. Okay. And also, of course, your real priority list, which is all the urgent important things. Okay. So this might seem like a crazy box, metrics to some of you. If you really think through it, you could categorize every aspect of your life into these boxes. Okay. I could put, something like, one of my children coming to me with a really emotional problem as urgent and important, right? And then I could put something like making, the perfect dinner for a dinner guest on Friday as not urgent, right, but important. So I've got to get the shopping, I've got to get the preparations, I've got to get ready for that. I could put something like, Facebook as not urgent and not important, or Candy Crush, whatever I want to put there. And it's things that, may help me to maintain my sanity, but, I need to see them for what they are, not urgent and not important. And then there are things like emails, voicemails. It's mostly our communication, on our devices that happen throughout the day that feel urgent but are definitely not important, or usually are not important to address right at that moment. And so if I've got my priorities, built out like that personally, I'll know how to prioritize as things happen throughout the day. Doesn't mean it'll be easy, But if I'm constantly thinking about that, evaluating that, it's something I can improve on and really put more effort and energy and time into things that are both urgent and important, and things that are not urgent but very important in life. Because once again, it's that top right box, the things that are very important but not necessarily urgent that we end up putting off until sometimes it's too late, right? That's where we get a regret list. That top right category basically creates our regret list on our deathbed. The things that we wish we would have done with our time, but we never did because they weren't urgent. They were very important things, but we didn't prioritize them while we were, able to. Things like relationships, family, education, service, caring, love, things that are, go beyond the scope of this class, obviously, but are truly, the most important things in our lives. And it takes effort to accomplish those top right, the things that are in that top right category. It doesn't take any effort to do the bottom two categories, right? Things that are urgent but not important. Our whole life can be filled with that. We've got so many things that seem urgent but aren't important throughout the day. And we've also got a lot of things that aren't urgent and aren't important that we end up spending our time doing. And so if we can cut some of that out or delegate some of that off or see it for what it is, just as R&R basically for us, which we need some of it, but we need to see it for what it is and really focus on the things that are important. Okay? All right, I think I have a slide that shows a company. This is a company that basically took Stephen Covey's boxes and actually put specific things, examples into them. And this is some kind of manufacturing company. Okay? And so you can kind of see urgent and important issues that come up. Okay. So some phone calls, some mail, some busy work, where we're just shuffling papers. Just different little time wasters that we have, little pleasant activities that we have. It can be not urgent, not important, but we might be spending a big portion of our day, if we're really honest about it, a big portion of our day might be on that bottom right category. And so just itemizing things out, being truthful about, what really we're spending our time doing is a helpful exercise. You can see on the urgent, there are going to be crises that you just can't avoid, you can't put off. They're urgent and they're very important to address right at that point. There's nothing you can do about that. Firefighting, right? If you're in a manufacturing facility and a fire breaks out, you can't say, well, that's not on my list of important things or priorities, so I'm going to not worry about it. No, I mean, everybody's just got to band together, immediately drop what you're doing and try to make sure that you get the issue under control. And then if you have a deadline as a group, that's both urgent and important. You got to meet that deadline. So one of the things that I think is really important is like I say, putting a lot of extra attention on that top right category, because these are things that we know are important, but we will not do unless we schedule to do them, because they're not things that we have to react to. They're not urgent. And because they're not urgent, a lot of times they don't happen unless we plan to do them. So it's kind of like that 30 minutes of planning that the time management article talked about. That 30 minutes will never happen, right? Unless we force ourselves to get into a habit of doing it, because it's not urgent. It's not, we're not going to see it as urgent. And because it's not urgent, we got 100 other things that we can start doing first thing in the morning instead of planning. But that planning on the business will make everything else about our day, much more productive, much more focused, much more, efficient. That can solve a lot of our angst about not accomplishing all the things we want to get done every day if we'll just take some time in the morning and really map out what it is that we need to get done in work or in our personal lives, because both can be accomplished that way. Okay, so that's what I wanted to look at beyond the articles this week. I think both of those concepts, the urgent important concept and the flow concept, give us some insight. I think they're just really insightful as far as our work life and our personal life. We need to make sure we're in the flow, that flow channel, right? We don't want to be in the frustrated and anxious category. And we don't want to be bored. We got to be that flow channel is where we're fulfilled. We're at our peak. We're efficient. We're productive. And then as far as an important and urgent, we got to make sure that we're highly focused on the important, right? We're always going to be reacting to the urgent and important, but are we taking the time that we should to plan and take the effort to do the important things that aren't urgent, that just keep getting put off and put off and put off until it's too late if we're not careful. Good luck with the discussion board this week. Should be pretty straightforward. Some good questions to answer. Should make getting 150 words pretty easy. Make sure you've got your responses as well to your peers. Get that first main post in by Wednesday so that we can get full credit. Look over those readings on time management and professionalism. Those are some good readings. And make sure if you've got any questions or concerns at this point in the class that you circle back around with me. Zip me a quick email. Help me help you, right? The Jerry Maguire thing. Make sure I understand where you're at if you're getting stuck somewhere so that I can help you get unstuck and so that we can give you, make sure that you're successful in this class. I wish all of you the best success. I hope it's a successful class. I'll do everything I can to help you out if you'll let me know and communicate with me. You've got opportunity this week no matter where you find yourself as far as, even if you're a little bit behind at this point, get your work done. Get in there, get it done. Let me grade it and give you some points for it. And then if you get stuck on anything, just let me know. We'll work through it. If you're willing to put in the effort, I have to put that caveat about effort because I always have somebody who emails me at the very end of a course and says, I haven't done anything. What should I do now? And the answer is get your work done. If you've submitted all your work and you're still not at the grade that you want, it's much easier for us to have a conversation about how you potentially can improve and how you potentially can get the score that you're looking for from the class by putting some additional effort in. But if you haven't efforted it and then you're coming to me for suggestions, I'm just going to tell you to effort the class. Get your work done, right? That's step one. Okay. Have a great week this week. Good luck with the rest of the course. And if, like I say, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Thanks and good night.